Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel for another midweek mystery video. So this is the story of the disappearance of 13-year-old Nicholas Barclay. Now he disappeared on the 13th of June 1994, 3 days after I was born, and he has never ever been seen again since that day. So he disappeared from San Antonio in Texas, and the last time he was seen he was playing basketball with a load of friends. So after he was done playing basketball, he calls up his home phone and his brother Jason answers, and Nicholas asks to speak to his mum because he needs a lift home. Now Jason refuses to give the phone to the mum, he doesn't want to wake her up because she's fast asleep, and says to Nicholas to walk home, and that is the last that was ever heard of Nicholas. Now the authorities actually believed originally that Nicholas had just run away. He'd done it lots of times before, he'd always come back home after like a day or two, but the authorities didn't really take it seriously because Nicholas wasn't the best behaved kid in the world. I find with a lot of these missing person cases, you read up on it and it's always like, oh, the person who disappeared was such a lovely person, they had never done anything wrong in their life, they were a straight A student, all this stuff. Whereas Nicholas was a little bit different because he was a little shit, to put it bluntly. He hit and swore at his mother all the time. The police were called to their home on many occasions. He was like well known by the police. He wasn't that well behaved in school, he barely actually ever turned up to school. And the day after he went missing, so on the 14th of June, he was actually supposed to be attending a sentencing because he'd been caught stealing a pair of shoes from a convenience store, and it was thought that he was going to get sentenced and sent to a juvenile like group home for children, so not a prison but somewhere for naughty kids basically. It wasn't a great home life for Nicholas either. His mum Beverly was addicted to heroin. His older brother was definitely a druggie, very much into drugs at some point. I can't find any solid information that says if his older brother Jason was into drugs at the time that Nicholas died, but he definitely was after, so that just sort of gives you a wide view of the sort of family that Nicholas was coming from. Nicholas, or he was known as Nicky by his family, was a Caucasian male. He was 13 years old when he disappeared. He had blonde hair, he had really blue eyes. He also had a lot of tattoos. He had a cross on his left hand, sort of between his thumb and his forefinger, so he had a tattoo just here. He had a, sorry I'm reading from my notes, he had a J on his left shoulder and an L and an N on his outer left ankle. Now on September 25th, 1994, about 3 months after Nicholas's disappearance, the police get a call from his older brother Jason, who's saying that he's just seen Nicholas trying to break into the house, and then when Nicholas has seen him, he's run away. Now this is a bit weird because why would he call the police if his brother, who's been missing for 3 months, is trying to break into the house? Clearly he wants to get into the house, so you'd let him in, you wouldn't call the police, you'd just like go and say hi and like, oh, where have you been? They clearly didn't have a very close relationship at all, if this even did happen. There's a lot of speculation that this isn't even something that happened, but I'll get to that later. So 3 years later, October 1997, police in San Antonio get a call from law enforcement in a place called NARS in Spain. And the man on the other end of the phone was saying that he worked in a youth hostel, sort of youth centre place, and he actually had Nicholas with him there. The caller said that Nicholas had escaped a child sex ring operation and he was very distraught, very traumatised, and just wanted to come home. So the police sent Nicholas's older sister Carrie to go out and identify him and bring him home, and Carrie went out there and said, yes, this is my brother, and brought him back home to the United States. Very short and sweet midweek mystery. You're probably thinking, oh, it's a happy ending. No, because of course this person that Carrie brought home wasn't her little brother. Bearing in mind that Nicky was a 13-year-old boy when he disappeared, meaning that around this time, 1997, he would have been 16 years old, the man that Carrie brought home was actually 23-year-old Frederick Bourdin. Now if you go on Frederick Bourdin's Wikipedia page, underneath his occupation, it literally says that he is a serial imposter. Frederick says that over the years he has impersonated over 500 people. 3 of them were serious missing child cases that he's impersonated. He is very well known by the authorities for what he does, and he's also very good at what he does. Like I said, Frederick was 23 years old, he was French, he had brown eyes, he had dark hair, he looked nothing like Nicholas Barclay whatsoever. I mean, there is no way that you could look at this person and think, yes, that is the same person as Nicholas. I've looked at photos of the two of them, there's nothing even slightly similar there. The real mystery in this midweek mystery video is why was the Barclay family so willing to accept this imposter as their son? So there's a big long story here, and if I mentioned every single detail we could be here for hours and hours, so I'm going to try and keep it brief. If there's anything that I've missed out that you think is quite important, then feel free to ask me down below. I've probably read about it, I've just really got to condense this into like a 20-minute video. But there's also a very interesting documentary called The Imposter. I did watch it on YouTube. It's very bad quality, like that I watched it in, so you might be best just to Google it, see if you can find it anywhere online. The Imposter. This guy, Frédéric Bourdin, is very charismatic, very charming. You watch it and you think, you know what, I'm actually convinced. He looks directly into the camera, he doesn't stutter, he doesn't flinch at any point. He is so convincing for what he does, and at the end you actually end up feeling sorry for him. You don't feel sorry for the family who went through all of this trauma, you feel sorry for Bourdin, which... how? But long story short, the way that Bourdin went about this and became Nicholas, he was being hunted by the French or Spanish authorities, knew he was about to get in a lot of trouble, and he thought, right, the only way I can get out of this situation is by impersonating a missing person from the United States. I need to get out of Europe now. So he actually called up the Missing Persons Bureau in the United States and said to them, oh, I'm here with a little boy who we think is from the United States, he's lost, I need a list of all the missing people in the United States. Somehow from that they ended up getting the name Nicholas Barclay, and Frédéric on the phone was like, yes, this is the boy I'm with, we found him. Of course he wasn't with any boy, he was himself. So the Missing Person Bureau sent over a picture, a very rough black and white faxed picture of Nikki, and Frédéric sort of thought, yes, I can do this. It was only a little while later that he got a coloured photo of Nicholas that he thought, I look nothing like this boy, this is going to be difficult. But of course he tried it anyway. He got the tattoos that Nicholas had done. Bear in mind Nicholas was 13 and he had all these tattoos, which isn't sort of that relevant, but that's ridiculous. Yeah, so Bourdin got these tattoos, he dyed his hair, he literally bleached his hair blonde. He came up with a story to explain why his eyes were brown. He said that when the child sex ring abducted him, they injected his eyeballs to make them different colour so he couldn't be found. And of course the French accent he explained by saying, hey, I was kept captive in France for 3 years, my accent's gonna change. Kerry arrives in Spain, takes one look at Nicholas and said, yes, this is my brother. She said his nose looks similar to my uncle's, it looks like him. Now I don't know about you, but if my little brother went missing and I didn't see him again for 3 years, I'm pretty sure they'd still look very similar. I could pick him out of a lineup straight out. We look alike, we have the same face, siblings look alike. Like, you will not forget what your brother looks like in 3 years. I'm sorry. I look at photos, my brother's now 19. I look at photos of him when he was 16. He looks the same as he does now. Now something that shows how good Bourdin is at what he does is that when Kerry arrived, she started showing him photos of all of the family, and he was commenting on them as if he was part of the family. It was very generic things, but things that would probably trick anyone. He looked at a photo of Beverly, his mum, and said, oh, mum hasn't changed at all, has she got a little bit of weight? Or he said, is grandpa still an arsehole? Very generic things, but things that would make Kerry believe that he was who he was saying he was. Now of course all the judges and prosecutors and FBI and stuff weren't convinced he was who he's saying he was, so before he was allowed to fly to the US he had to pass a test. Now he was actually shown a series of 5 photos from the family and he had to explain what was happening in the photos, who was in there. Out of 5 of the photos he actually got the first 4 right. He did get the last one wrong, but he said in the Imposter documentary, he was like, by that point she was already convinced, the judge was already convinced that he was who he said he was, didn't even pay any attention to the fact he'd got the last one wrong. He was given a US passport with the name Nicholas Barclay in and was allowed to fly straight back to Texas. Now something that is very dodgy about this entire situation is that when it shows Bourdin / Nikki arriving back at the airport, he's obviously greeted by his entire family. Now his older brother Jason was not there. He actually didn't end up visiting for a month and a half, which is very dodgy. You'd think if your younger brother had gone missing for 3 years you'd want to run and see him as fast as you could, but apparently not. And the mother, Beverly, seemed very wary, very confused at this reunion. You'd think the mother would be crying, you'd think she'd be so happy, she'd be overwhelmed with emotion. Nope, not Beverly. She didn't really seem like she wanted to go over and say hi. There is actual footage of it. I'm sure if you Google you'll be able to find it. It's very strange. So Bourdain went to live with Carey and her husband Brian and their 2 children. He actually enrolled in a high school. Bear in mind he was 23. At this point in my life, I'm 23. I could not imagine anything worse than going back to high school, but he seemed very happy to do it. He got all his homework done on time. He'd play with his nephews. He'd play Nintendo, and like he just moulded in with family very, very well. Now he said that during this time when he was living with Carey, he would take any opportunity he could to research about Nicholas. He'd ask questions, he'd rifle through drawers, he'd look at photos, he'd like adopt any mannerisms that the family mentioned that Nicky had. He'd take them on. Beverly even said that Nicky always used to kneel in front of the TV, like he'd just sit really close to it and kneel in front of it. So Bourdain started to do the same. So it was on November 1st that people started to get suspicious. Now bear in mind he was only brought back in October. This is actually very quickly that people started to tag on that maybe he wasn't who he said he was. But the family was so convinced. The family were like, no, this is Nicholas. He is who he says he is. So a private investigator called Charlie Parker was approached by a TV producer who was producing like a tabloid show called Hard Copy. And the producer basically wanted Parker to go in and just do a bit of research. So on the 6th of November, Parker arrives at Carey's house, which was actually a trailer, and with this film crew, and Carey was like, no, go away, I do not want to speak to you, we're a very private family, all this stuff. Whereas Bourdain / Nicholas was very much like, yeah, I want to speak to them. And Bourdain actually said that at this point he was just desperate for attention. It was what he did best. He wanted to be in front of the cameras. He wanted to fool everyone. And this, I think this was kind of his downfall here. If he wasn't so desperate for attention at this point, I don't think he would have been discovered for a long time after. So Bourdain told this film crew his harrowing story about child sex trafficking and what had happened to him for all these years. But Parker was a very, very good private investigator. He spotted a photo on Carey's sort of mantelpiece of Nicky, the real Nicky, and looked at the ears. Now it turns out ears are actually almost as distinctive as fingerprints. An ear doesn't really change. Like you see all of like the ridges and stuff is unique to every person. Like people do have obviously the same ears, but your ears never change. When Parker saw this photo of Nicky and then said to the cameraman to zoom in on Bourdain's ears, he noticed that they were actually 2 very, very different ears. Parker was obviously terrified that these people were living with a dangerous stranger, didn't think they knew anything of what was going on, so called Beverly and warned her. Beverly was like, no, this is my son, like I know who my son is, go away. Something really interesting actually is bear in mind that this is what Bourdain did. He lied. He was a pathological liar. All of this actually started to take a toll on him, and in December he took a razor blade and completely mutilated his face with the razor blade. And he actually ended up in a psychiatric ward in the local hospital. He was only there for I think about 10 days or so, but this was pretty serious. Like he couldn't hack it. I think it was also around this point that older brother Jason came to visit and was very standoffish, very wary, seemed just as confused as their mother did when Bourdain first came back to the country. He apparently gave Bourdain a necklace, like a gold cross, and was never seen again. And it was actually a couple of months later that Beverly said that Jason died of a cocaine overdose. However, Jason had been off the drugs for a while. He was doing really, really well with himself. So it's widely thought that this was actually a suicide, which is really sad. But again, we'll come back to that later. Now, I have already mentioned that the FBI were never convinced that Bourdain was Nicky. They asked for a lot of DNA samples, all this. So at one point, the FBI went into Beverly's house to ask for a DNA sample, and she laid on the floor and refused to get up until they left. I'm not entirely sure how eventually they did manage to get hold of this DNA sample, but it was around March that they managed to get DNA. So they took Bourdain's DNA and the family's DNA and put it through a system, and of course it popped up on Interpol. Now Interpol, I think, is sort of the international criminal database. Anybody who's being searched for, like any missing people, any big criminals on the run, they're all on Interpol. All their DNA, everything about them is on there. So all the authorities have to do is run it through that, and boom, up comes a match. Now I couldn't find any information anywhere as to why the authorities didn't do a simple DNA test on Bourdain when he was first claiming to be Nicky. I don't understand why they didn't do that. Maybe they did, maybe it just didn't come up, but The reason Bourdain did this because he knew he was being searched for by Interpol, so he had to get out of the country. Of course, at this point, March 1998, the game was totally up for Bourdain. He was captured, he was sentenced, he actually ended up spending 6 years in prison, which was 3 times what the sentencing recommendation was, so the judge took this incredibly seriously. He caused a lot of trauma. It was very harrowing for the Barclay family to have to go through this. Older sister Carrie actually had a mental breakdown. Now, this is where we're going to talk about the family. I personally believe that Carrie didn't know anything was going on. I think she 100% believed this was her brother. I think she was just so desperate to have him back that she accepted him as her own. I don't think she knew anything else that was going on. Beverly and Jason, however, I don't think Nicholas disappeared like they say he did on that day in June. Now, I'm not going to accuse anyone. I have no idea what happened. Nobody knows what happens. Ever since Jason's died, any sort of leads that there were around Nicholas's disappearance have sort of fizzled out. But there's a lot of people online who are saying that Beverly and Jason actually had everything to do with Nicholas's disappearance. A lot of people believe that Jason killed Nicholas. He got very angry. Nicholas was a very difficult child, and maybe Jason was on drugs, and one thing led to another and he exploded and Nicholas ended up dying. Beverly possibly knew about it and helped cover it all up, which is why 3 months later Jason called the police. Apparently the police were beginning to sniff around the family. That's when Jason called the police and said that, oh, he'd just seen Nicholas trying to break into the house. Maybe he was trying to cover it up, which is also why Beverly was very confused when this random stranger appeared back claiming to be Nicholas because she knew he was dead. Why Jason didn't come to see him for so many months, because he obviously knew as well that he wasn't who he said he was. It could also possibly be the guilt that killed Jason eventually. That could be why he committed suicide, which is very sad. Even Bourdain himself obviously spent a lot of time with the family. He did move in with Beverly towards the end of the 5 months, and he said that they had some blazing rows, and there was one row where Beverly was totally like drunk or on drugs or something. She wasn't sober, and she turned to him and said, "Who the fuck are you? I don't know why you're doing this to us," which obviously has the connotations that she doesn't know who this guy is either. It's worth saying that the FBI also feel the same about this, but this was a long time ago. This was like over 20 years ago now. And Jason was questioned at the time, but he was very evasive, didn't really answer any questions, wasn't much help. Beverly was also questioned at the time, and she actually did a polygraph test, which is basically a lie detector. Now, she did it twice. The first lie detector she did, she was very drugged up, she was on opiates and all sorts, and when they were questioning her, everything came back as truth, like she was totally calm. However, when they got her off the drugs and she did another test, the lies were off the charts. If Nicholas didn't die, which I really hope is what didn't happen, maybe he did just run away. He was a very naughty kid. He just ran away and been living under the radar ever since. It's a very big possibility, especially as he had his sentencing coming up the next day. Maybe he just didn't want to be there, so took off and run. Maybe his brother telling him to walk home was the last straw and off he goes. There is also the possibility that he was kidnapped, but by somebody else entirely. He could have been running away and then caught in maybe a rival gang thing, or he was attacked on the streets. I think the story here isn't so much what happened to Nicholas. I don't think we'll ever really know, to be honest, but I think the story is why this family so willingly accepted this stranger into their home. He could have been totally dangerous, but they let him do it anyway, which is weird. And on that note, I'm going to end this here. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's a bit of a different one, I know, but I figured I'm going to switch things up a little bit. Yeah, comment, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Let me know if there's any other mysteries you want me to film in the next few weeks. I've got a list, but I'm always adding to the list, so let me know. Goodbye.